Let's bring in CTV's Jeremie Charron, who's live in Ottawa for us this morning. Jeremie, last November, Jeneroux said he was going to resign and that he was not coerced to make his decision. It was for family reasons. Yesterday, he came out saying he was so moved by Prime Minister Carney's speech in Davos that he had to change his position. Or was that the plan all along? What's your read on this chain of events?
Yeah, look, Caroline, I think that's a question many are asking. Looking how everything has transpired here, we may never know the real answer, but certainly looking at kind of the chain of events here, to your point, you had the first floor crosser in Chris d'Entremont in November. Shortly thereafter, there were a lot of talks about Matt Jeneroux being a potential second to cross the floor and join Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberals, defecting from the Conservatives. There was so much talk about it that MP Matt Jeneroux posted a post on social media about it, denying the fact that he would be crossing the floor and saying that instead he would be resigning completely from politics. He then, in a later post, clarified that there was no coercion involved in his decision to resign. There was a lot of talk about what had transpired and why he was deciding to leave politics rather than cross the floor, which had been speculated on. And so, between then and now, not clear what's changed other than what we know through the statement that Mr. Jeneroux has posted online, which is that he had conversations with his family, difficult conversations at times, and come to the conclusion, especially following Prime Minister Mark Carney's speech in Davos, that he would not be leaving politics as he had announced he would at some point this year, but rather is going to be crossing the floor and joining Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberals. So certainly it begs the question, was this the plan all along? What happened? Why did we see all of this speculation only for him to announce that he would leave, only for him now to go ahead and do what many had speculated he was going to be doing in the first place? There are many questions here.
So many questions. One clue may be found in the statement that Matt Jeneroux put out yesterday, buried right in the bottom paragraph, says that he is inspired by building a strong economy, bringing down costs, and he cites in particular nation-building projects and Canada's new MOU with Alberta. So do you think perhaps he's saying, listen, I'm seeing that this Liberal government is moving in the direction that Albertans want with potentially building a pipeline to the West Coast, and I can support a government who's saying that. Do you think that's the shift, that MOU?
I think there's no question that that could play a role here. He's an Edmonton area MP, represents the riding of Edmonton Riverbend, and to your point, is very clear in the bottom of that statement what his priorities were when he got into politics and when he ran in the latest election, and that those remain his priorities, and names, of course, by name, the MOU between Ottawa and Alberta. So I think there's no question, that is something he can take back to his constituents and continue to say that he is fighting for, and sees in this government that could help his constituents in his Edmonton area riding. So I think there's no question, he's been clear through what he has stated in his online statements that he is supportive of the work that Prime Minister Mark Carney has undertaken so far. He likes what he has seen, and has been clear that, that's why he is making this choice. He talks a lot in that statement about, kind of a turning point for the country, and what role he can play in trying to enact change and ensure that Canada is on the right path moving forward. So, all of those things point to someone who is, supportive of the current Prime Minister and likes what he has seen in the almost year now that Prime Minister Carney has been in office. So I think there's no question that ultimately could have played a role. He had some time here between, November of last year, roughly, in announcing that he was going to be leaving politics. The date wasn't clear. It was kind of always open-ended. To now, he's had a lot of time to kind of think about it. And it would appear he likes what he's seeing from Prime Minister Mark Carney, right?
Yeah, but you mentioned constituents a moment ago, Jeremie, and it's really constituents that will be the deciding factor come the next election about whether he stays in office. Alberta is typically a sea of blue when it comes to federal elections, save for Edmonton. Edmonton can sometimes be the only safe haven, but not this riding, not Edmonton Riverbend. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens here, whether the MOU with Alberta is enough. Just quickly before you leave you, Jeremie, I want to shift to whether or not there's any more rumblings on the Hill about any other floor crossers to come.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's a lot of talk, but they are just rumblings at this point. I think the Liberals are doing everything they can to court anybody they can to cross the floor, including Mr. Jeneroux, who will be doing so. But they're very close. You have to look at the numbers. It is a numbers game, as it has been for some time here. We're talking about a very tight numbers game, a majority that is very close to, minority that is very close to a majority. And what this means in Mr. Jeneroux crossing the floor is that the Liberals don't have to launch one more by-election. Again, he was expected to be leaving politics altogether. That would have been a by-election that would have had to have been launched again. We're already looking at 3 by-elections. And now we're in a scenario, Carolyn, where the Liberals actually don't need another floor crosser to get a majority. There are 3 by-elections that will be taking place. One to replace Bill Blair, who's going on to be the High Commissioner of the UK. One to replace Chrystia Freeland, who left her role to go play an advisory role with Ukraine. And now a 3rd by-election in Terrebonne after the Supreme Court annulled that result. So those are 3 ridings that have been held by the Liberals. 2 of them would be considered Liberal strongholds. The other in Terrebonne, not so much. So we'll see what happens with that riding. But if they're able to keep all 3 of those seats, they have 172 seats in the House of Commons. So, the floor crossing game isn't, not to say it's forgotten at this point. The Liberals would love to have, if you ask them, more than a 1-seat majority, but there is a scenario in which they are able to achieve that majority even without enticing anyone else to cross.
True, potentially, but I think Terrebonne is going to be an awfully close race. I mean, it was decided by 1 vote, and historically a block riding at that. So lots to be seen. Never a dull moment on the Hill. Thank you, Jeremy. CTV's Jeremie Charron, live in Ottawa.
Anytime.